All right, so our next feature, if you will, today is a work called Leaders, the Strategies for Taking Charge by Warren Bennis. So this is one of your all-time favorites, correct?
It is, and it's co-authored with another by the name of Burt Nanus.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is a 1985 book, so let's do the math on that again, almost 40 years. But for me, it was a transformational book, because up until this period of time, if you go back and look at the literature, we pretty much use the words leadership and management as synonymous if you look academically or if you look in the literature itself.
Yeah.
And he's one of the first people to come along and argue in this book there's a difference between the two.
Okay.
It was a study of 250 what he calls super leaders, and he went to the private and the public sector looking for people who had this reputation, looking for commonalities.
Okay.
So when he got done with the research, he found there were 4 things that they had. One, and he was the vision guy. He was the first one to mention, in fact, I don't know if you remember this, but when Bush and Clinton were running, Clinton reads, obviously, and he kept on talking about vision, and one of the things that Bush said was, what is this vision thing? You know, It made us realize maybe he's not paying attention, but anyway. But they realized that's one of the first responsibilities of a leader. We are vision-driven people.
Sure.
We need to have a picture of where we're going to go, basically. So he said that these people had a very common vision. They created cultures where it reinforced that vision and energy, if you would. Obviously had people in place that could make that vision become a reality. But here was the last piece, is their great passion for it.
Sure.
So those 4 things basically is what he found. In fact, interesting piece in there was a young man that he found down in Southern California in a cinder block building that he said when you walk in there, it's just kind of dirty and filthy, an old warehouse. He said, but the energy when you walk in there, he says, these kids think they're going to change the world. But he did not say that with skepticism. He said it was resolve because he saw the resolve of a young man by the name of Steve Jobs.
Okay.
As they talk about the rest is kind of history. So he predicted, if you will, success there in 1985.
Yeah.
This book comes out and they said, well, Warren, you're a professor and you talk funny, so can you break the book down for us average people? And so he thought for a minute, evidently, and his response, in fact, it's on the front of the book. He says, well, this is how I would summarize this book. Leaders focus on doing the right thing, while the managers do things right.
Yeah.
Now, for me, that was a eureka moment, because you see the play in the literature between him and a man by the name of Peter Drucker. And Drucker had just done a study, and I was aware of this about the same time. He did the study back in the 70s, but I became aware of it in 86. So this book comes out in 85, read the book. Then you got Peter Drucker and this study that was done with the Los Angeles Police Department, where he said, one of the things I see about you folks is you're so focused on doing things right here that you fail to do the right things.
Yeah.
Well, if you put those 2 together and think about the sequence of this, read the book, then I hear this quote. What was he saying? He said, the agency is so focused on managing, it often fails to lead.
Sure.
And that was an answer to for me, dilemmas that I'd seen over and over in every organization I had been in, whether it was in the military or whether it was in the public sector where I worked at the time. So it was a very revelation for me.
So it sounds to me like that's saying, you're so worried about following everything by the book and not having any flexibility or adaptability or taking things situation by situation and looking at it from its own merits, that you just want to check boxes and say, I did what I had to do and I don't have any flexibility to exercise leadership. Is that it?
Let me tell you that this is a dichotomy that goes on constantly in every organization, private and public sector. There's a subsequent book to this by John Cotter that is, I'll think of the title in just a moment, but Harvard type. And he really clarified some of Bennis's work in '92. So there's 7 years difference there. But he comes back and really starts differentiating between the two. Does a wonderful job of isolating on that and give you an example. But let me just give you a personal example.
Okay.
I got several of these that I have, but the one that comes to mind here, I think that people will appreciate. I, at the time, had, this goes back in the early 70s, I'd gone back to school, get a degree, had been in law enforcement, and I'd worked in Alaska as a state trooper. And I had left that job after 4 years, which was difficult to do because I loved the work, and went back to school. And then when I got ready to go back there, I had, for the last semester that I was there, I had gone from a full-time student to a part-time student. Now, I'm getting ready to go back to Alaska to start the career over again. Now, meanwhile, the pipeline, if you remember the pipeline, the oil is rushing up there, so there's a big economic boon up there, basically.
What year was that?
This is 1976 in the spring.
Gotcha.
And I'm getting ready to go back up there. And I had worked there for 4 or 5 years. I was going back to work with the agency.
Yeah.
I did not realize this at the time, but I'm getting ready to go back, and the colonel from personnel called me and said, "Bill, we just found out you're a part-time student." I said, "Yeah, so what?" He said, "Well, as a part-time student," he said, "you've lost your residency protection. You're considered to be a non-resident now, and we are prohibited literally by rule in this state from hiring a non-resident. We have to hire residents only." And the reason for that is they had hired people who were non-residents who came up, could not acclimate to the climate or to the job, spent literally millions of dollars sometimes hiring those people collectively, and then lose them within a year or so.
They lead to kind of the culture shock, it sounds like, or the environmental culture shock.
They put somebody in what they call a modular building at 60 and 70 below zero with no satellite TV and no mall, and you'll find out what that family is about. These people are leaving in droves.
Yeah.
I'd lived there for 6 years. I'd worked for the department for 4. So they went back to the personnel and said, "Well, wait a minute, your whole purpose of your rule is to basically vet people who've never lived here. The man's lived here for 6 years. He was married here, had a baby born here, went back to school, got an education of his own volition, simply wants to come back and finish out a career here. If there's ever a time that you should probably waive the rule to our advantage, it would be this." And the response was?
Got to check the box.
No exceptions.
Yeah.
So focused on doing the thing right, they failed to do the right thing. Now, by my values, certainly, if you will. So I had several experiences like that and never understood the logic of it. But when I read this book and then took Drucker and plugged Drucker into Bennis, I started realizing what we were saying over and over again. You pick up a newspaper and see it every day of your life. Pick up an organizational newspaper and see it every day of your life as well.
So one of the things, having a team that's in technical support that we strive to do is make sure that those calls, when you receive them, aren't like many technical support calls for products to where you call a line and that person has a card they read off of, and anything that deviates from that card, they don't know what to do, right? And so it sounds to me like that's your management, is reading the card and trying to jam everything, or maybe that's your Abilene, right? Trying to jam everything in there and make it fit that, whether it does or not. And your leadership then is saying, hey, this is a specific custom situation. We're going to take the facts, we're going to take this all specific to this and do what we need to do to make sure there's an outcome that's effective for that person, or that the call leads to technical support that can help that person finish their job.
And see, that's why if we understand that in the leadership role, that if you provide people the intent of the company, what's the philosophy of the company about servicing this client, then it starts giving me some discretion to be able to apply that on an individual basis as well too.
Sure.
If that makes some sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So were there any takeaways from this that you were able to apply and maybe sustain in life, or that's part of your curriculum?
Well, let me just say to you that I got so pumped after having this experience, and went back to my office and started tearing books off the shelf and looking in the literature. This is 1986 again. Looking at that literature and differentiating between this manager and leader. So first of all, let's get this on the table too. Doing the thing right and doing the right thing are both critically important. Sure. Whether it's organizational, anywhere, public or private sector.
Sounds like it's that happy balance, that medium, that making sure that we're not going to extreme either way.
And they're normally working together. I can give you another example, if you allow me, very quickly here. When I was in the military, and I happened to be in Vietnam, and I was with an organization, or I was with a company. I joined a company that was really having some difficulty morale-wise, and we found out it was kind of a micromanaging, over-controlling captain of that company. And here we are out in the middle of nowhere. He wants you in a full utility jacket, blouse boot, 103, 4 degrees, the humidity is 102% basically, and you've got these body sores. And you're going to get them. Everybody has them there. And you couldn't get rid of them.
What causes them?
Well, it's just an infection that everybody's going to get. And it's going to get from your scalp to the soles of your feet.
Like airborne, or is it from the water? Or?
All of the above.
Oh, okay.
It's the heat and the humidity and getting acclimated to it. And they make your life miserable. They're not life-threatening, and we couldn't get rid of them.
Yeah.
Navy corpsmen, I love this, they had a concoction of wintergreen and iodine they would pour together and pour on the open sore, and it hurt like in the ways I can't explain to you.
And what are those things for people that... What are those two things? Wintergreen and iodine. Okay. What are those?
Yeah, just mix them together and try it next time you have an open sore. You'll never forget the experience.
Google it.
So grunts are interesting people. An 18-year-old kid will figure it out if you give them time. And you know what we figured out is that if we can get the utility jacket off and get some air, some sunshine. If you could get on this Song Trebong River, which was briny, salty water, they would start to cure up a little bit. But if he caught you without the utility jacket, or he caught you in shorts, or he caught you down that water, he would discipline us. And he said to us, because he didn't want somebody flying over and seeing us out in uniform, but you can believe that. Well, it wasn't, our adversaries we got air.
Yeah.
But he was worried about some colonel that might gig his group because they weren't properly decored.
So he's worried about himself, not about the team.
Yes, and his career. Yeah. And so here's a classic example. So focused on doing the thing right, he's failing to do the right thing by his people. Now watch how this, wearing the uniform is normally a good thing, isn't it, okay?
Yeah.
So doing the thing right and doing the right thing are working together. The moment, though, that you juxtapose into that, body sores, they're now in conflict. So now we see these two worlds coming together with conflict. You see that?
Yeah.
Now here's where then the leader's ability to step in and come up with a solution then. So what do we do here? Well, we had his subsequent replacement came in, and the first thing he said, let's get the utility jackets off, and let's get some fresh air and sunshine to these open sores. And see if you'd agree with me. From our perspective, he does the right thing at the right time, in the right way, and for the right reason. And that's what evolved from this. Okay. Is that, we went back and said, all right, if we got Peter Drucker talking about you're so focused on doing things right, you fail to do the right thing. You're so focused on managing, you fail to lead. Yeah. And then we got Bennis talking about the difference between these two. Can we come up with a tool that you and I could use, a simple tool that would help us to think as a leader and a manager? Because we have a tendency to gravitate more toward one or the other. Just by personality, we see that sometimes. You see that? So we start off with the thinking of, if you will, Bennis and Drucker. Doing the right thing. Are we doing the right thing? Yeah. Timing, and here's what we argue to you. These are four variables that when you are in the decision-making mode, that you don't even consciously realize, we're going to throw you into these four contingencies. Yeah. Doing the right thing is about values, belief system. That's leadership intent, if you want to put it that way. Sure. That's a leadership question. Timing is about management. You can do the right thing at the wrong time. It won't make near the difference. So the right thing, right time, and the way that you do things. Now the way you do things, there's two things to this. One, your human relation skills, and secondly, your knowledge of procedure in whatever business you might be in, private or public sector. Yeah. So that is a management concern, if you would, but also a leadership concern. Sure. The way you do things versus, if you will, the procedural things. Yeah. And then the reasons you say things. And I've never weighted those four different dimensions. And I would hesitate to do that because they're all four critically important in my opinion. Yeah. But the reasons you do things, we put that in there initially thinking more from a kind of I guess I would say an ethical component. But then what we realized, the dynamic of it, the reason that a leader does things dramatically impacts the motivation of their people.
So it seems to me like, though, is the reasoning self-serving or serving upon others? Yeah.
And that's always the test, is who benefits by doing the right thing.
Or the organization, maybe. Yes. Which would be others.
Hopefully the organization would benefit. So because it's the reasons you do things is about the center of your soul. And I've asked people this question before. It's always interesting to watch their response. If you have somebody who does the wrong thing at the wrong time in the wrong way, but does it for the right reasons, there's a tendency for us to extend grace to them or forgive them for that if they learn from it. If that makes some sense to you? Yeah,
it's kind of like what they call as a mistake of the mind or the mistake of the heart. Yes. You did it for the right reason, you meant well, but you messed everything up in the process. Yeah.
But I watched the dynamic of it. Just my experiences. People will extend that if they feel your heart is pure.
Sure.
But you can do the right thing at the right time in the wrong way and for the wrong reasons, and it will absolutely will never get off the ground.
Yeah.
People discern it very quickly whether or not if there's guile to your heart or not, basically. So those 4 dimensions, you get one no, you sit back down again. But those 4 dimensions make you look at both sides of the ledger, both the leadership side as well as the management side. And it's a simple test. And it seemed, well, I can give you example after example. It works.
Sure.
And by the way, a great parenting tool.
Oh, yeah.
A great parenting tool, in my opinion. My own grandbabies, I often say to them, you're trying to do the right thing there, and your timing's good, but the way you're doing that with mom and dad just isn't going to work.
Yeah, so the timing thing is so important, too. And one of the things I've realized over the years in marriage is that we don't have in-depth, important conversations first thing in the morning, last thing at night, or anytime someone's hungry. And so for years, I want to do it right now and get it over and check that box and move on. But I learned time and time again, failure and failure again. I did it at the wrong time because it was my way and I needed to wait until it was right. And
but you're making a great point with that. You can use it also to reflect back. For instance, I was trying to do the right thing at the right time, but it was the way I did that. So next time, and you start to create the picture of that behavior for the future as well too. Next time, maybe and then you decide on how you might handle that set of circumstances. So it can also, in the aftermath, become a tool to help you reflect and hopefully don't make the same mistake twice. Because people are forgiving, except when you make the same mistake over and over again with no change in behavior. So.
Well, it's a decision tree, but it also sounds like what you just said. It's a ever-evolving decision tree because you're adding elements to it from your mistakes and your lessons learned.
It's a simple tool in a very complex world. But that's what we're looking for. So simplicity is what I said, the other side of complexity.
And so you believed in that so much that you had it struck on your coin that you passed out.
Absolutely, because it's a reminder to me, for one thing. And as much as I've worked with this, I screw it up every day of my life.
Yeah.
But at least gives me an opportunity to reflect back and realize what I might do differently next time.
And so the difference now, I'm guessing, for you is that you have the awareness to realize when you screw it up and the motivation to fix it as to where maybe before you didn't.
Most of us, what was it? I think Schwarzkopf said this, is we know the right thing to do, but it's invariably the harder right.
Oh, always,
Absolutely.
Awesome, Bill. Thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
As always, you can be found at email. We'll put that in the link or in the comments below, the link to his email. If you enjoy the videos, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Like the video, leave us some comments down below. If there's any books you would enjoy us reviewing, myself and Bill in the future, leave those down there because we like to get the comments about the books as well. So thanks for coming in today, Bill. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
All right, we'll see you next time.